我要扭轉我嘅命運，我要做個飛仔。以後我與你相約或晚上，星河定能碰上，愛到永遠沒有溫長。
Putin has just been humiliated. Ukraine has taken back a piece of vital land, territory that Russian forces spent months trying to capture, and now it's gone. Just like that. This wasn't part of Russia's spring offensive plan. They were supposed to be gaining ground, not losing it. But Ukraine's latest move has turned the tide and exposed cracks in Putin's entire strategy. So what exactly happened? What makes this land so important? And what does this single loss mean for the rest of the war? Let's break it down. The news of Ukraine's massive win comes from an April 17th report published in the Kyiv Independent. The outlet reports that the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrskyi, recently visited a number of his country's brigades on the front lines in Donetsk. There, he learned that Ukraine's careful planning and intelligent operations had resulted in a massive win. The country has retaken around 6.17 square miles of territory in the Pokrovsk region. That territory includes regions near a trio of vital settlements, including Shevchenko, Udachny, and Kotline. Syrskyi was jubilant when delivering the news. Over the course of 3 days, I visited almost all brigades of this powerful grouping of Ukrainian defense forces, which bears the brunt of the enemy's spring offensive and destroys its best forces and means, the Ukrainian military commander proclaimed. He's not wrong. In addition to recapturing a vital chunk of territory from the Russians, the operational tactical group Donetsk, that hosted Syrskyi for 3 days, is also halting around 30 Russian operations per day. Putin's forces are suffering significant losses as a result. And those losses open the door for operations allowing Ukraine to retake territory. And it's likely going to get worse for Putin. Syrskyi's visit focused on areas of the Donetsk front line that Ukraine could improve. The Ukrainian military leader met with brigade commanders in Donetsk to review operation plans, revealing that Ukraine is struggling with issues that include ammunition supply, logistics, and combat organization. All three are noted and being addressed, claims Syrskyi, which is terrible news for Putin. As his forces in Pokrovsk grow weaker, Ukraine is only going to become more efficient and effective. Do you need an example? Well, also on April 17th, the Kyiv Independent reported of just one of Ukraine's successful defenses against Russia's recent offensive maneuvers in the Pokrovsk region. Ukraine's 14th Chernovo-Kalina Brigade came up against a large Russian force that clearly had the goal of retaking some of the territory Russia just lost to Ukraine. That force included hundreds of Russian troops, many of which were riding in armored combat vehicles and motorcycles. It's believed that Putin deployed 2 companies in his desperate attempt to retake land near Pokrovsk. The offensive failed. Ukraine killed around 200 Russian soldiers, injured another 30, and destroyed 115 units of valuable Russian military hardware. And therein lies the problem for Putin. He's losing territory in a vital area of Ukraine because his forces are already depleted. However, Russia's leader simply can't stop ordering offensives in the region, else he'll reduce the level of pressure he's exerting on Ukraine. Those fresh offensives are carried out by drained Russian soldiers, resulting in massive casualty rates, such as those seen on April 17th. So Russia is caught in a vicious cycle. Each offensive move it makes results in a gradual weakening that makes each attack that follows significantly weaker. Ukraine takes advantage of this growing weakness to launch counterattacks of its own, which leads to Russia losing more territory. If you need any evidence of that, remember something we just mentioned a moment ago. Putin ordered his troops to attack Pokrovsk on motorcycle. That form of transportation offers no protection against Ukraine's hordes of drones or its artillery fire. So we come back to the headline. Ukraine has just reclaimed 6.18 square miles of territory from Russia, and based on everything we know about Putin's offensives in Donetsk at the moment, the odds are that more territorial wins lie in Ukraine's future. But that brings us to a question. Why is Pokrovsk so important in the first place? The BBC explained in an August 2024 report in which it pointed out that Pokrovsk plays a vital role as a logistics hub the Ukrainian military uses to keep its forces stocked up in the Donbas region. First, note the date of that report. August 2024 is over half a year ago, which shows you just how long Putin has been fighting to take control of the territory that Ukraine just claimed. Pokrovsk is home to a key railway station, the BBC reports. In addition to the town being located at the intersection of several roads that lead to different areas of Ukraine, so its utility is clear. Ukraine transports military hardware and soldiers into Pokrovsk, with all being redirected to where they're needed most on the front lines. By taking the town, Putin not only gains all the logistical advantages it provides, but also deprives Ukraine of a key way of supplying its forces in the Donbas region Putin has battered for much of 2024 and into 2025. Ukraine had hoped to protect Pokrovsk in less than conventional ways back in August. The town, which is home to 69,000 people, most of whom are employed in machine building, coal mining, and metallurgy, has been evacuated. When Ukraine launched its Kursk counter-invasion, also in 2024, it had hoped to force Putin's forces to divert from Pokrovsk to defend Russia's territory. That didn't happen, at least not to the extent that Ukraine had hoped. Putin instead amassed a fighting force of 50,000 in Kursk, including around 10,000 North Korean soldiers, to slowly retake that territory. Putin's assaults on Pokrovsk intensified toward the end of 2024, and that created other problems. For one, Pokrovsk is known as Ukraine's coal mining capital, and with good reason. It's home to the largest coking coal plant in the country, which is a vital resource that's used by the steel industry to produce the coke needed to make materials. Therein lies another reason Putin wants Pokrovsk. Gaining access to these coking coal facilities would be a boon to his country, as it's dealing with an equipment manufacturing crisis. Taking Pokrovsk along with similar industrial regions would take a bite out of Ukraine's economy. We see that in the state of Ukraine's steel industry since Putin launched his invasion in February 2022. In that year, Ukraine's steel production fell by 70.7% as it focused most of its efforts on repelling Putin's forces. Output dropped to 6.3 million tons in 2022 and declined again to around 6 million tons a year later. Ukraine is recovering from these steel production issues Russia has caused, but slowly. Its steel production, which again relies on the coking coal towns like Pokrovsk provides, has risen by 2.7% in 2025 so far. By retaking territory around Pokrovsk, Ukraine paves the way for a full assault against the Russian-occupied town. If it retakes that town, Ukraine's steel industry suddenly has the opportunity to regrow enormously. That's great news both for Ukraine's economy and its ability to manufacture steel for the weapons it produces domestically. Russia's capture of Pokrovsk would also hold massive symbolic and practical consequences for the Ukraine war. As one unnamed soldier told the BBC back in August, the fall of Pokrovsk would lead to the total destruction of these cities and a lot of people dead and a lot of suffering. After that, there will be more cities. So I really hope we will stop them on the outskirts of Myrnarad and Pokrovsk. Of course, that didn't happen. Russia managed to take areas in and around Pokrovsk. As Russia continues its slow push to eradicate the last Ukrainian forces from Kursk, Ukraine has started its own push to liberate Pokrovsk entirely from its Russian invaders. The retaking of over 6 square miles of territory around the vital town means Ukraine now has the opportunity to launch a more significant offensive, using that reclaimed territory as a jumping-off point. Putin may have reclaimed Kursk from Ukraine, but in return, he stands to lose one of the most vital towns in Donbass. There's one more reason why Pokrovsk is so vital. It lies just 12.4 miles away from the administrative border of the Donetsk region. By reaching that border, Putin will finally achieve the goal of capturing Donetsk, which he's had since he first started his campaign of aggression against Ukraine in 2014. Right now, his forces control around 60% of the Donetsk Oblast. With Ukraine still able to coordinate its defense from the administrative border, Pokrovsk provides Russia with a potential route to that border, which in turn would give it control over Donetsk and an opportunity to push even deeper into Ukraine. Now Russia's forces are losing territory in this vital region, pushing Putin's ambitions for Donetsk even further out of his reach. By now it's clear that Russia's forces aren't doing what Putin needs them to do in Pokrovsk. That leads us to an obvious question: how did this happen? A large part of the reason comes down to how badly Russia's offensive operations have faltered as we move deeper into 2025. Multiple sources report that Russia is capturing far less territory per month now than it was at any point in 2024. The Kyiv Independent is one of those sources. On April 1st, it shared battlefield data from the monitoring group Deep State, which claims that Russia only managed to seize about 51 square miles of Ukrainian territory in March 2025. That may sound like a lot, especially when compared to the 6 square miles or so Ukraine just recaptured in Pokrovsk. However, that territory capture rate amounts to the lowest that Russia has achieved since June 2024. In other words, Russia's gains are on a rapid. Deep State says that we can see this when we track Russia's gains from its peak in November 2024. In that month, Putin's forces took almost 280 square miles of Ukrainian territory. They managed that because Ukraine's forces were overstretched in Donetsk, allowing Russia to take advantage. Ukraine has managed to strengthen its defenses since, resulting in Russia's gains slowing to about 154 square miles in December, 123 square miles in January, 72 square miles in February, and then finally the tiny 51 square miles in March. Other sources provide similar figures. The UK's Ministry of Defence claims a similar decline, stating that Russia took 55 square miles of Ukraine in March compared to 126 square miles in January. The Washington-based Institute for the Study of War paints a slightly rosier picture for Russia. It says Putin's forces took 165 square miles of Ukraine in January, down to 78 square miles in March. But whichever source has the most accurate figures almost doesn't matter. What does matter is that there's a clear pattern on display here. Russia is gaining far less territory now than it has at any point during the previous 6 months. Don't underestimate the importance of this slowdown to Ukraine and its efforts to counter Russia's aggression. It shows that Ukraine's defensive tactics are achieving their goal of depleting Russia's forces, creating opportunities for counterattacks like the one we've just seen in Pokrovsk. It also strikes a morale blow against Russia for a simple reason. Putin's forces are supposed to be engaged in a massive spring offensive. At least that's according to both Syrskyi and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Back in March, Zelensky warned that Russia was amassing forces for a renewed offensive that would likely focus on the Sumy and Kharkiv oblasts. Syrskyi reinforced those claims on April 9th, stating, "I can say that the president is absolutely right, and this offensive has effectively already begun." He added that Russian offensive operations had nearly doubled across all main sectors of the war. Why does this matter? Well, Putin's launching of a new spring offensive, particularly one that appears to focus primarily on Ukraine's northeast, suggests that he was confident in the work Russia accomplished in Donetsk the previous year. It was gaining ground in Pokrovsk, along with several other key territories. Russia had also consolidated those territories by setting up defenses within them. That gave Putin the confidence to switch his focus to other areas of Ukraine, especially after the success he experienced in pushing Ukraine's forces out of Kursk. Ukraine capturing over 6 square miles of territory in Pokrovsk throws a massive wrench into those workings of Putin's spring offensive plans. Now he has to dedicate even more troops and resources to a region that he thought he'd secured months ago. The knock-on effect is that the already faltering offensives in Sumy and Kharkiv grow weaker, as Russia is forced to spread resources further across the Ukraine war's front lines to stop a Ukrainian advance deeper into Pokrovsk. That's where it gets really bad. After all, another reason why Ukraine just managed to achieve what it did in Pokrovsk is that Russia's military is running low on practically everything. We got a hint of this when we examined the failed April 17th Russian offensive in Pokrovsk earlier. Putin is sending his forces to assault Ukrainian positions on motorcycles, which is almost a guaranteed way to get your troops cut down by drone and artillery fire. But what Putin doesn't want Ukraine to know is just how severe his equipment problems really are. No matter where you look, Russia is dealing with shortfalls that are going to impact its spring offensive and lead to more situations like the one that allowed Ukraine to reclaim over 6 miles of territory near Pokrovsk. Take personnel as an example. In February 2025, United 24 media reported that the Russian military has suffered the irrecoverable loss of almost half of its total personnel since Putin launched his invasion. That's according to a military expert named Yuri Fedorov, who pointed to data from the International Institute for Strategic Studies that claims that Ukraine has killed 172,000 Russian soldiers and wounded a further 611,000. It's the wounded figures that are the big headline here. Of those 611,000 who suffered injury, only 235,000 have returned to the battlefield. The other 376,000 soldiers have suffered injuries so severe that they can't head back to Ukraine. As a result, Russia's irrecoverable losses stand at approximately 550,000 soldiers and officers, half of the total pre-war strength of the Russian armed forces, including naval and air force personnel, Fedorov told United 24. Worse yet for Putin, Russia's federal budget data reveals that it was recruiting around 1,000 new soldiers per day. That sounds like a lot until you realize that these recruitment figures came at a time when it was losing about 1,500 troops daily in Ukraine. Things aren't getting much better for Russia. On April 15th, it lost 1,050 soldiers, along with 9 of its tanks, in a single day. And that brings us to another problem Russia faces that makes things like Ukraine's recent Pokrovsk exploits possible. Putin is also running out of tanks. According to Pavel Lutzin, who's a defense analyst with the Center for European Policy Analysis, Russia can only manufacture around 60 new tanks per year. The rest of the supposedly new tanks it's sending to Ukraine are actually tanks pulled from Russia's Soviet-era stockpiles that it refurbishes. Those stockpiles are running low, with Russia having already sent the best of its older stock into Ukraine. What's left are the dregs, the tanks that weren't deemed good enough to enter Ukraine in the past because they take longer to restore and are in worse states of disrepair than the tanks Russia has already sent. That's a massive problem when you consider that Ukraine's Ministry of Finance says that Russia has lost 10,662 of its tanks already. Divide that by 38 months of the Ukraine war, and we get a monthly loss rate of around 280 tanks. Building 60 new tanks per month isn't going to offer much when Russia is losing over 4.5 times that many. There are other areas where Russia is suffering from shortfalls. Armored vehicles are in as short supply as tanks, as demonstrated by Putin sending his soldiers into battle on motorcycles. Russia is also running low on artillery, which only further weakens both its assaults on Ukraine's positions and its ability to defend itself against Ukrainian counterattacks. It all adds up to a simple fact: Putin's military is getting weaker by the month. And that leads us to the final reason Ukraine managed to pull off what it just did in Pokrovsk. As Russia grows weaker, Ukraine becomes stronger. That fact was highlighted by the Atlantic Council in March 2025 when it published a piece discussing how Ukraine's growing military strength is an underrated factor in the peace talks intended to bring an end to the war. It points out that Ukraine has about 1 million soldiers defending its country at a time when Russia has lost 50% of its pre-war force and is struggling to replace the manpower Putin churns through with his meat grinder tactics. Ukraine's army is backed by a highly motivated and rapidly expanding domestic military-industrial complex that is harnessing the excellence of Ukraine's pre-war tech sector and reviving long-neglected Soviet-era capabilities, the Atlantic Council adds. In other words, as Russia pulls from its depleted Soviet stockpiles to keep the war going, Ukraine is only just tapping into the experience it developed during that era to make itself stronger. We see that in Ukraine's defense industry. When Putin launched his invasion, that industry had about $1 billion of capacity per year. By the end of 2025, that number is expected to reach $35 billion, and it has the potential to grow higher, especially if Ukraine can remove limitations on its defense budget. Even as it stands today, Ukraine is building around a third of the weapons, equipment, and ammunition it's using against Russia, in addition to becoming a global leader in drone production. What does all of this mean? Ukraine's ability to defend itself and in the future launch more attacks is only growing as Russia's capabilities decline. That's what makes Putin's spring offensive so desperate. He's launching it at a time when Russia simply isn't capable of taking the amount of territory it needs to take. As Ukraine grows even stronger, it'll successfully defend against this offensive and create even more gaps in the front line. So the 6 square miles in Pokrovsk is just the starting point. As the war drags deeper into 2025, we're likely going to see Ukraine take even more territory, thanks to the growing strength of its forces and Russia's developing weakness. That can only spell bad news for Putin. Right now, he wants to take territory in Sumy and Kharkiv. That's the goal of his spring offensive. But the reality he has to face is that he should be far more concerned with Donetsk and Luhansk. Russia holds 60% of the former and 98.5% of the latter. Ukraine just proved it can retake territory in these key regions. Look for Russia to lose even more as we move deeper into 2025. But what do you think about what Ukraine's forces just achieved in Pokrovsk? Does this represent a turning point in the war as Ukraine draws closer to retaking a key logistical hub? How will Putin respond, assuming he can respond at all? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more commentary on the latest developments in the
講其他嘅嘢乜嘢事啫？你決定嘅嘢，呢個 Donald Trump 話決定嘅嘢，佢決定嘅嘢就冇得翻轉頭㗎啦。就真係有得翻轉頭啊！就決定嘅嘢，就邊度有咁易嘅事㗎？堅打仗啊，就唔係遇咗贏輸嘅問題啊，就打仗嘅咧就點解要打仗啊？就係因為嘅乜嘢啊？自己嘅需要啊，你先嚟打仗㗎，係冇人肯打仗㗎。第二嘅咧嗰啲後援證咧。嗰啲地球打仗嘅傷害個地球嘅後遺症邊個負責啊？嚇！ 一個強嘅國家打一個弱嘅國家，就邊個贏啊？啱啊！你哋乜嘢啊？你哋咁有錢做到自己嘅乜嘢啊？進化到佢嗰啲打仗嗰啲乜嘢啊？英文講 weapon 啦，中文講唔知攻擊武器啊。基本係打起嗰個地面嘅咧，嘣一聲係有副作用噶。冇你哋冇話你哋讀咁鬼死啦，多書你哋唔知啊！你冇計算到就係真嘅。好似日本咁一個大海嘯咁樣冚落嚟喎。唉，呢啲你諗，咪我哋諗，我哋啊就因為烏克蘭嘅問題就影響到我哋市民嘅問題。我梗係支持烏克蘭人㗎啦，呢個賽咪就打仗邊？喂，呢啲好明顯嘅嘢，你哋其實好明顯嘅嘢，就兼加上乜嘢啊？係冇能力同佢哋鬥嘅。呢啲長期自然啊，就美國幫緊你嗰啲乜嘢啊？其他國家都 佢哋唔覺得煩，佢哋唔覺得咧打仗嘅呢啲嘢唔煩嘅咩？唉，成日搞到好似星球大戰咁。你講得唉。有好多其實我睇過唔知邊啲國家嚇，嚟分配下俾我 check 下先。
We don't know what peace in Russia and Ukraine would look like, but we do know that the onus would fall on Europe to maintain it. This is Ukraine's front line with Russia. It's 640 miles long. The shaded red, that's territory Russia has taken from Ukraine over the past decade. President Zelensky said 110,000 troops would be needed for any peacekeeping force to be effective. And European military chiefs are prepared to send personnel, but the number in question are far smaller, under 30,000. And crucially, those soldiers would not be posted close to frontline areas in the east of Ukraine, out of concern they could be attacked by Russia. Instead, this is being described as a reassurance force to support the return of Ukrainians to the country and to protect critical infrastructure. Troops would be sent to major cities, ports and nuclear power plants, which could prevent attacks like this one on the Chernobyl power plant last week. Satellites, spy planes and drones could also help in the effort. Fast jets would protect Ukrainian airspace and allow commercial flights to resume. And warships could be sent to the Black Sea to remove Russian mines. So there's more to this than the number of boots on the ground. But Zelensky has been clear. He wants more of them too. So how much could European countries send? Well, the British Army has around 75,000 regular full-time soldiers, the French 114,000 and Germany 60,000. Although only a fraction would ever be sent, in the UK, defence sources say we could be looking at just 5,000. And then there's the US, whose army dwarfs ours. So Keir Starmer has said the plan would only work with the US backstop, but the Americans have definitively ruled out sending troops. And whatever the plan, the rules of engagement will be vital.
All peacekeeping operations need the consent of the warring parties, the antagonists, for peacekeepers to be on their territory. One presumes within this operation that the consent of Ukraine would be there, but would we have the consent of the Russian forces?
For its part, Russia has said the presence of European or NATO forces in Ukraine as part of the peace deal would be unacceptable. So this is still very delicate and far from a done deal.
如果佢哋乜嘢啊？個乜嘢啊？就計劃成功嚟講就好，你就都唔一定贏到啊。
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war. Right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud, and they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But just something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, largely destroyed. They have the spires, the beautiful spires that go up. They say they were the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead. Millions of people dead because of 3 people. I would say 3 people. Let's say Putin, number 1, but let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number 2, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
我想問嗰啲美國人啊，點解咧？我咪講政治㗎嚇，其實我就會分清楚佢啊嚇。點解好選唔選到 Donald Trump 嘅？呢個人，呢句我係最唔明嗰個。你哋又唔知嗰個 Donald Trump 有幾多厚？問題係佢上咗去，係咯，佢上咗去美國 Parliament 嗰個 Parliament 嗰度啊，係問題係咧，佢有好多嘢咧。美國利益，佢係冇諗到美國利益嗰度噶。加上咧，美國係咯，美國嗰啲失業率越嚟越升，就再加上 Donald Trump 上咗去就升得仲嗰啲乜嘢啊，失業率升得太過，兼而家 快。唔係美國嘅問題，唔係美國人嘅問題咯，係咪就美國人咧就唔係咯？美國人唔係想咪就美國人嘅問題咯，就你問我，咪就我咁樣問你就，咪就咁樣問你咪Donald Trump有咪好啦？嚇？佢咧就你講嘢就 OK 就如果加上咪就我講咯，就我咁講我就咁講4、6、7講出嚟，我係咁講出嚟啊！就你哋嘅乜嘢啊？你哋嘅你就美國人嘅失業率較高咯，就你哋在同選中 Donald Trump 嘅。選中 Donald Trump 做乜嘢？做呢度啊！都話坐你樓下落幾危險嘅問題。你有冇上到啊？佢 Donald Trump 指導咪好憎嗰啲中國人嘅。係咯，就擺到明，Donald Trump咧就擺到明好憎外國中國人嘅，就再好似加上4月份咁加重水，嗰啲中國會唔會你嗰個 Donald Trump？ 咪就係咯，就都佢又會唔會理啊？再加上咧乜嘢啊？2、4、6、8、9、12、13、14、15，再加上啊就。唔係，我問你啊，我咁樣問你啊，再加上咧烏克蘭同埋烏克蘭同俄羅斯一係鬥到七彩喎，就會唔會理？就佢哋會唔會聽過啲乜嘢啊？會唔會聽過嗰個多數冇打仗啦，就有乜有物？我覺得唔會咯，就打得更加勁啊！係其實佢哋打真係就佢哋打得更加勁啊！就問你哋，呢啲問你哋咯，我咪就係咯，就佢話乜嘢啊？就俄羅斯總統錯嘅，就分明係加上係就話兩面都錯，分明兩邊係有問題。咪就多唔識諗嘅，就當陣就。呢場仗打咗3年，就嗰兩條友嘅，梗係有問題㗎啦。就一個人打交，就你諗下咯，一個人打交，咪就唔撩嗰個烏克蘭就點會踢佢走？佢哋士兵走啊，就理得佢哋行嚟行去添。問題係咧，烏克蘭係問題，咪就呢個就太大個問題喎，就俄羅斯想拎走烏克蘭嗰幾笪地方啊！但係烏克蘭就唔俾啊，就俄羅斯就夾硬嚟咯。但係問題係佢哋烏克蘭嘅政府夾硬嚟嘅話，佢哋市民會服嘅咩？咪就真係，如果搶到嗰啲城市落去俄 俄羅斯嗰度啊，就問題係佢哋會服嘅咩？就我覺得唔服咯，就冇拎緊嗰啲烏克蘭嘅證，咪係咯，就拎咗個烏克蘭證，再俾你打到連屋企都冇，連家人都唔真係有幾多個？咪因為俄羅斯侵略呢幾個城市就連就絕後咯，就佢哋會服咩？OK， 就烏克蘭會唔會替嗰啲市民報仇呢？我係估計係會嘅喎。點啊？OK， 就俄羅斯想走啦。OK， 就拎到嗰啲城市係啦，想走啦。喂，大佬啊，俄羅斯打到烏克蘭點嘅樣啊？想走有冇搞錯啊？就係冇話就英國、德國、法國啊 ，OK 就嘈埋嗰個隔離鄰居鋪靚啊嗰啲人喎，就有冇搞錯啊？飛埋佢嗰啲國家有冇搞錯？你哋想走佬啊？解決咗佢哋嘅問題先啦。烏克蘭唔係烏克蘭係俄羅斯，呢個禍係你惹翻嚟嘅喎。OK 就如果就 OK 就如果俄羅斯惹咗咁嘅禍出嚟，下一任俄羅斯嘅乜嘢啊？個 leader 邊個真係邊個坐就邊個死。喂，我唔講出嚟，咪就真係我唔講出嚟啊！就邊個坐就邊個死啊！就邊個坐咗之後就邊個要搞掂呢啲收視啊！就俄羅斯梗係冇，真係咧就嗰個呢度梗係唔俾佢走啦！我嚟做市民我都唔會俾俄羅斯咁嘅呢度走添啊！就如果走，咪落咗台，下一任就攻佢烏克蘭，由烏克俾真係如果佢哋轉咗呢，但嚟講攻烏克蘭又唔係㗎， 就另外一個攻烏克蘭呢，就係另外一個乜嘢啊？千古罪人。OK， 拎咗嗰幾個城市之後，俾翻佢啦。喂，同佢和好有冇得和？咪冇得和好之，即係有冇得同烏克蘭嘅呢度和好呢？係好係。烏克蘭嘅呢度都講到明冇可能，所以佢哋講到明嘅呢，就產生呢個戰爭嘅話呢，你哋就會拎貴嘅energy 啊，嗰度明燒埋嗰啲協議書，咪佢真係燒埋協議書，而家先嚟坐喺度面對面呢，咁樣去傾，遲唔遲啲啊？問題係遲唔遲啲啊？就如果美國就轉咗 Donald Trump 都冇用啊，就第二啊，咪就即係佢哋打到火行火爐突，聽 Donald Trump 講收皮啦，就佢哋係明知 Donald Trump 都係一個唔守信用嘅歧視美國佬，佢哋會唔會插手啊？佢會唔會插手啊？就烏克蘭就有可能會插手嘅，係因為上一任佢哋嗰個拜登同 Donald Trump 呢，就話到明㗎啦，幫佢㗎啦，就冇辦法幫。而家3年之後俾翻 Donald Trump 呢搞翻呢，冇可能啊！真㗎冇可能㗎，就佢 Donald Trump 呢就呢，我咁樣講啊 ，Donald Trump 係咁喺中國嗰個門呢，嗱呢搞冧咗㗎啦！你哋真係你哋嘅後路越嚟越難行，咪受美國市民嘅後路越嚟越難行啊，難過英國啊！我覺得英國好嘅，真我係住嘅梗係英國。Donald Trump 會唔會 佢斷咗呢個後路呢？睇下 Donald Trump 點樣講先啦。
We don't know what peace in Russia and Ukraine would look like, but we do know that the onus would fall on Europe to maintain it. This is Ukraine's front line with Russia. It's 640 miles long. The shaded red, that's territory Russia has taken from Ukraine over the past decade. President Zelensky says 110,000 troops would be needed for any peacekeeping force to be effective. And European military chiefs are prepared to send personnel, but the number in question are far smaller, under 30,000. And crucially, those soldiers would not be posted close to frontline areas in the east of Ukraine out of concern they could be attacked by Russia. Instead, this is being described as a reassurance force to support the return of Ukrainians to the country and to protect critical infrastructure. Troops would be sent to major cities, ports and nuclear power plants, which could prevent attacks like this one on the Chernobyl power plant last week. Satellites, spy planes and drones could also help in the effort. Fast jets would protect Ukrainian airspace and allow commercial flights to resume. And warships could be sent to the Black Sea to remove Russian mines. So there's more to this than the number of boots on the ground. But Zelensky has been clear. He wants more of them too. So how much could European countries send? Well, the British Army has around 75,000 regular full-time soldiers, the French 114,000 and Germany 60,000. Although only a fraction would ever be sent, in the UK, defence sources say we could be looking at just 5,000. And then there's the US, whose army dwarfs ours. So Keir Starmer has said the plan would only work with the US backstop, but the Americans have definitively ruled out sending troops. And whatever the plan, the rules of engagement will be vital.
All peacekeeping operations need the consent of the warring parties, the antagonists, for peacekeepers to be on their territory. One presumes within this operation that the consent of Ukraine would be there, but would we have the consent of the Russian forces?
For its part, Russia has said the presence of European or NATO forces in Ukraine as part of a peace deal would be unacceptable. So this is still very delicate and far from a done deal.
哇！就唔知邊個呢就好勁啊！就設計咗呢就乜嘢啊？就同個地方差唔多嘅呢，就斬翻去嗰度。哇！不知幾勁。不過呢，就要 delete 翻嗰啲片段係何必呢？無西，但係佢哋無西仲好啊！就無西咪實質係嗰啲軟件嗰啲啊。就啲冇識嗰啲語境冇，嗱就打到翻去邊都唔知邊度乜嘢啦，可以死口唔認，食乜 delete 啫？喂！加上咧，咪就唔係我話下呢啲嘢。唔係我話就呢啲嘢就我唔反翻轉頭睇嘅咧，就係佢哋兩個係又係為做乜嘢啊？錢嚟賺， 何必呢？大佬話何必侵佔嗰啲乜嘢啊？何必侵佔嗰啲咪嗰幾個城市啫？倒翻轉頭啊，俾烏克蘭打翻轉頭，何必當初呢？呢啲嘢為咗咁嘅石油，唉，嗰個乜嘢啊？唉，嗰個乜嘢啊？就嗰個俄羅斯啊，嗰個俄羅斯乜嘢啊？就都係決定錯誤㗎啦，就何必你攻擊侵佔人哋嘅嗰幾個城市呢？就唔係侵佔人哋個國家。唉，嗰啲市民啊，就好真係市民都唔會乜嘢啊？
This is how you stop. His younger sister. This is how you stop children's phone addiction. Mom took ashes from the furnace and drew dark circles around her child's eyes. She woke up like this and immediately wanted to use her dad's phone.
Как сделать из обычного смартфона проектор? Все очень просто. Для этого нужно специальное приложение с технологией обратного света исхода. Но где его скачать? Теперь мы можем смотреть фильмы прямо как в кинотеатре. Играть в игры с проекцией на стену.
唉，嗰啲打仗何必呢？
This lady is truly something else. Instead of getting affection, her dog ends up being an easy target. Its neck grabbed, its nose held.
What if the Dragon Ball Z fused with legendary superheroes? The results would be absolutely unstoppable. First up, Frieza merges with Wolverine, creating an unbreakable, regenerating warrior with a razor-sharp claw.
After just being scolded by her mother for something, you won't need a TV in your room anymore. Because this application will help you turn your phone into a projector through the phone's flash. And you can mirror your phone screen to anywhere. Try for free now. Try for free now.
今日嗰啲劇。 你哋打佢都唔知打啲乜嘢。你有冇諗過呢？就佢哋打嚟打去為咗啲乜嘢呢？係就係咗啲乜嘢打？你哋啊，就諗下啲。就何必打仗呢？就嗰啲烏克蘭啊，就打拎翻嚟，拎翻嚟就之後，啊，就嗰啲地板會唔會地震有後遺症嘅？唉。唉，就我呢啲未識我俾個片俾你睇下，俾個片俾你睇就，如果有好多人呢，好似佢咁嘅呢，就打翻去嗰度打翻自己，幾好啊！好啦，希望你中意嘅話就俾個 like 俾我嗱，唔中意嘅話俾個dislike 俾我。如果有乜嘢問題，其實有乜嘢我做錯嘅呢，可以俾個 comment 俾我，就話俾我知。 但係我有乜嘢咧可以做得更加好？
The Russians tried to boast about the technological nature of their attacks on Ukraine, but got into a scandal. RIA Novosti propagandists themselves revealed that the operators of the attack drones were working directly from Moscow City. Now, even Z channels admit Moscow's business center has become a legitimate military target for Ukraine. Now there is every reason for a new attack. While the Russians were posting a video with pathos about the amazing capabilities of the new system, even the propagandists realized the Ukrainian armed forces strike on the skyscrapers was a matter of time. The post was quickly deleted, but the screenshots and the reaction remained. RIA Novosti released a story about the use of FPV OVOD drones controlled via the new Orbiter system. According to them, one of the drones hit a target in Chasavoy Yar remotely from Moscow City. The drone crew prepared the launch, and the operator from Moscow City carried out a precise attack, the description said. In the video, the operator is at the control panel in a glass office with a view of the towers and the center of the capital. Exactly an hour after the publication, a storm of criticism began. Russian Z channels, including The Empire is Very Evil, sharply condemned the propaganda. Well done, you bragged. Now Moscow City is a legitimate target, the administrators wrote. The video was first cleaned up. The mention of the location was removed, but the wave of discontent did not subside. Dozens of Z channels, including pro-Russian Telegram communities with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, began accusing RIA and SVO speakers of irresponsibility. Some compared what was happening to shooting at one's own people, but only in the information field. Now, when a Ukrainian drone flies into a tower, explaining that it is a civilian target is simply stupid, write military bloggers. The distance from Moscow City to Chasov Yar is about 495 kilometers. The Russian side has effectively confirmed that the strikes on Ukrainian cities are being coordinated from peaceful offices in the business center of Moscow. Now, every salvo from the orbiter makes the skyscrapers near the Kremlin less and less protected from a moral and legal point of view. And if in the future the Ukrainian armed forces launch a pinpoint strike on the control centers, the Kremlin will have to justify itself, not to NATO, but to its own citizens. Even Russian propagandists admit, if it flies, it will be for good reason.
Dramatic CCTV footage from a grocery shop in the Ukrainian city of Sumy showed the moment a devastating Russian missile strike hit the city in the deadliest attack on Ukrainian civilians this year. According to Associated Press, back-to-back missile strikes rocked the city on Sunday, killing 35 and injuring more than 100 others. Video captured by security cameras from in the Gifts of the Sea shop shows workers running outside after a first strike shakes the building. Minutes later, a second strike hits much nearer, breaking glass, sending goods flying and smashing holes in walls. The manager and two salespeople were seriously injured while others in the shop suffered minor injuries, according to sales assistant, Lyubov Ivashina. I was working, doing my job, then there was an explosion. I fell to my knees. And after the explosion I saw people running around with their heads pierced and others wounded, she said. She described running outside and seeing a woman come down the street with two injured children. With her colleagues she flagged down a passing vehicle and helped the injured girl aboard, then the second missile hit. I don't think there's any justification for any of this. I think that any misunderstanding in a state or between states should be resolved on a more civilized level, she said. The attack in Sumy, which had a pre-war population of about 250,000, came just over a week after a Russian missile strike killed about 20 people, including 9 children, in the central Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih. Russia said it was targeting a meeting of soldiers, but there is no evidence to support the claim.
Я працювала, займалася своєю роботою непосредственно. Потім був вибух, упала на коліні. І після вибуху я бачила, що там почали люди бігти, як з голова пробита, ранені почали йти. Мы выскочили помогать им. Слева, со стороны пиццерии, девушка несла 2 детей. Ну, мальчик там, по-моему, был маленький, ну, в районе годика. А девочка, ну, лет 7. Девочка была ранена в районе ключицы. И я помогала им. Сначала маленького ребенка держала, а потом смотрю, что там с девочкой плохо. А мои коллеги в этот момент уже там некоторые помогали машину остановить, потому что надо было девочку везти в больницу. И помогали погрузить. Я поехала с той девочкой, и в тот момент, когда я зашла уже в бус, мы детей погрузили, зашла в бус, я держала девочку. И когда коллега закрыла дверь, только трогаться, мы, там секунды мы начали отъезжать, и был второй взрыв. Сильно раненых 3, заведующая, 2 продавца. Еще было 2 сотрудника. У одной перелом на руке, ну, небольшой, но перелом, и на лице посеченные осколками. Ну, стекло дробно было. А вторая девочка чуть-чуть там порез, она больше морально пострадала. Но она чуть-чуть просто, у нее место было такое, что к ней это все не долетело, ни стекло, ничего. Тут было окно, оно вылетело. Витрина у нас была, тут был у нас слайсеры, резали мясо, нарезки делали, тарелки, все такое. Где-то вот было попадание, где-то вот попадание было на кондиционер целый.
对了，奶奶，这是妈妈想要的冰罩杯啊！
啊，你说谁想要冰罩杯啊？
没有，我也忘记刚才说什么。
不准把吃的东西拿来当玩具。
情侣愛得放鬆，我不是果粒橙，想喝的時候搖一搖。沉默地與愛人風裏飛奔，高聲歡呼你有情，不枉這生。